this. Morning, everyone. You hear me okay? Welcome, welcome. Great to see you all. For those that don't know me, I'm Andy Haldane, formerly of this parish, now one of the 9.5 million economically inactive people across the UK. For the purposes of this morning, though, privileged to be the chair of the Inclusive Growth Commission for the East Midlands, the final report from which was published on Monday of this week. It's available on the RSA's website. In a few minutes, I'm going to pass the floor to my colleague Mark, who sat here, who will take you through in more detail, building on the presentation some of you have seen from Ollie, on the recommendations, the key recommendations from this final report. We'll have a session then with a number of the other commissioners. I should say up front, we have a fantastic set of commissioners. You'll see just how fantastic this morning when you hear from them, who've brought real wisdom and expertise to the table. You'll have a chance to chat with them, and you'll have a chance to ask them some questions about the report. But before all of that, I want to welcome to the stage the person who really the instigator and leader of this Growth Commission, Claire Ward, Mayor of the East Midlands. Let me just thank up front Claire for setting us on our course and showing faith in us as a commission to do this. I hope we are repaying that faith with the report, and even more importantly, I hope it makes a real difference both to you and the team and everyone in the East Midlands region. Please welcome to the floor Claire Ward.
Well, what a great turnout for the East Midlands. And I think that in itself tells us a lot about the journey that we're on and those who want to be with us and part of it. So I want to start by giving a big thanks to the team at the RSA, to Andy, for all the work that they've done and for hosting us here today. I, without doubt, have got the best job in the world. And for those of you who know, I was previously a Member of Parliament. I've definitely got the best job in the world. Sorry to the MPs in the room. But the East Midlands is a region for movers and for makers. For generations, we've built things, we've created things, and we've powered Britain. And that spirit is still alive today. It's in our businesses, in our communities, and certainly from our launch on Monday in the region, it's definitely in our young people. And people know what hard graft is. They've built their lives on it. But let's be honest, it's not easy. Times are not easy and haven't been for some while. Too many people face hurdles, rising housing costs, patchy transport, insecure work, and services that are stretched to the limit. And the cost of living is biting hard. Wages are 15% below the national average. House prices are still 6 times average earnings. And for too many, the dream of a secure home feels further away than ever. And as for transport, well, I know how tough it is. Up until 3 months ago, this region had the lowest transport investment per head in the country. And anybody who lives in the region who doesn't drive or can't afford to drive knows that by the daily reality of their lives. And it's a statistic that's existed for decades. 1 in 5 residents say poor transport makes it harder to get to work or to education. That has to change. And I'm pleased to say that it will do. I'm confident it will, thanks to the money that I've managed to secure from government in the last spending review. But what's also changing is that for too long, people thought you had to leave the East Midlands to get on. That's not true anymore. Of course, we've got brilliant international global brands like Rolls-Royce and Toyota and Boots. But we've also got fast-growing firms in green energy, AI, life sciences, logistics, and the creative industries, and more coming. Just this week, the announcement of American investment as part of the UK-US deals this week that will bring £11 billion into the development of AI and data centres and SMR. That is real investment and real jobs. With more apprenticeships, more young people staying on for university and staying afterwards to build their careers and their lives in the region they know and grew up in. And it's a big but, ambition alone is not enough. Too many people still find the doors closed. A good job, a decent home, a reliable bus to get you to work. These are things that are harder to reach than they should be. And that's the problem that this report identifies. Things we knew, but it's great for some people in and outside of our region to hold that mirror up to us and to show us that reality. But what they've also seen through those conversations with people in our region, it's not aspiration that's missing, it's opportunity. And that's why today matters. The Inclusive Growth Commission gives us a plan. And at the heart of it is a brand new idea, the UK's first Opportunity Escalator. It's a really simple concept. I'm amazed it hasn't been thought of before. But of course, all the best things get created in the East Midlands. Instead of expecting people to make one giant leap, we'll build the steps so they can get on, get up, and keep moving forward to better jobs, better homes, and better lives for them and for their families. A young person leaves school, they need training, and that training should lead to a real good job. And these jobs should pay fairly, and those wages should make it possible to get a home, to start a family, and to build a life. Or think about a single mum who's worked in retail all her life. Supermarkets, clothes shops, the odd shift behind a bar. She's brilliant with people. She knows how to solve problems. And believe me, anybody who's worked in bars knows how to deal with some of the most difficult of people. But the pay is terribly low. The hours are insecure. It's, of course, 0-hour contracts. And she's never really had the stability to build a secure life for her and her child, let alone make the most of that life. So the Opportunity Escalator changes that. First, we recognise the skills she already has. Then we connect her to a training course in one of our growing sectors. Let's say green energy, a course that's flexible, affordable, fits around her childcare. And while she trains, she gets the support she needs, subsidised childcare or help with travel. So cost is no longer a barrier. And crucially, that training is tied directly to real jobs with local employers. So when she finishes, she doesn't just have a piece of paper, a certificate to say, yep, that's it, you've ticked that box. She's got a genuine offer of work, a job, perhaps in sales, that pays fairly with predictable hours and a clear route to progress, giving her and her child the stability, making the most of that potential. And that's exactly what this escalator is designed to deliver. We put the collective arm of our region around you, and we help you to climb step by step. So today I make this promise to those in this room and to those across my region. I'll take this report and I'll turn it into action. My local growth plan, due next month, will be the country's first inclusive growth plan. Every investment, every decision, every pound spent will be judged on one simple test. Does it open doors for people? Does it help ambition to become achievement? And we've already started. The Peak Pass saves young people £800 a year in bus travel. That's one of the things that was in my manifesto and delivered within a few months. because it matters and because it changed lives. We've set up a youth committee, and we heard from some of them on Monday, and gosh, were they brilliant. And we're backing all of this with the biggest investment in skills, in housing and transport in the region, more than it's seen in a generation. Investment that reaches every corner and every community of our region. But I can't do this alone. It has to be a joint effort for people in this room and beyond, academia, employers, trade unions, investors, the public, and the private sector. And of course, our voluntary and community organisations, all working side by side to deliver for our people. A shared endeavour. It's not my plan, it's our plan. So finally, I want to just say a huge thank you to Andy Haldane for overseeing this excellent piece of work, to the team at the RSA for getting under the skin of the challenges of the region, and for really understanding the people who live in it. And of course to the commissioners, our local commissioners and our national commissioners, for dedicating their time to turn those challenges into a once-in-a-generation opportunity that I hope will get not just engagement in our region, but right across the country, and probably prick up the ears of government. So let's get on with it. Let's knock down those barriers. Let's open the doors and prove that wherever ambition is found, opportunity will follow, giving people the chance to get on, to get up, and to build a future in the East Midlands they can be proud of, the best region to live in, to work in, and to learn in. Thank you.
Hi everyone. I'm Mark Lloyd. I'm Head of Policy here at the RSA. I'm going to take you through some of the details of the report. I'm going to try not to speak for too long because I want to hear from our commissioners, really. What was the Inclusive Growth Commission? Well, we were tasked with recommending an ambitious, long-term and evidence-based plan for inclusive growth in the East Midlands. And you'll probably have seen the photos of our commissioners up here already today, but we were blessed to have 8 wonderful commissioners. We were very much, it was delivered by the RSA, but it was led by our commissioners who brought a range of both local and national perspectives to the issues. And then behind that team of commissioners stands a team who've worked exceptionally hard at the RSA to create the analysis and the final report and recommendations. That includes a multidisciplinary team of quantitative and qualitative researchers, delivery managers, comms colleagues, and the people who organised the event here today. So I just wanted to say thanks to everyone who's been involved in producing the report. And there it is, there's the final report. You can download from that QR code if you haven't already done so. So let's start by asking, what is inclusive growth? So we defined inclusive growth as an approach that seeks to expand the incomes, opportunities and well-being for the widest number of people and places across the region as possible. And the key word there, as you've heard from the Mayor and from Andy, is opportunity. The toolkit that we've designed and the broader approach across the report is to try and spread opportunity as widely as possible, and to do that in a more evidence-based way than has been before. We got here through a very sort of intensive process of stakeholder engagement and research. It's called an inclusive growth plan. We took a very inclusive approach to get here. That included surveying 2,000 local people, conducting workshops in local places with different ages and demographics. We think we've met with around 500 people over the course of the past 12 months, including employers, civil society, etc., as well as our own kind of research program and testing the policy with local stakeholders as well. Just to situate our work within the devolution context, I know many of you will be familiar with this, but as the Mayor said then, the East Midlands Combined County Authority is a relatively new strategic authority, but like all the others, it's been tasked with writing a whole set of quite important economic growth plans in the coming period. And that includes sort of first amongst equals, the local growth plan, which is described by government as supposed to be the guiding star for the other plans. But there's also the spatial development strategy, local transport plans, Get Britain Working, etc. I guess the primary aim of our work was to try and make that local growth plan process an inclusive growth plan, as the Mayor was just saying there. So just pausing on the opportunity then. So for those of you who are already familiar with the East Midlands, you'll probably know that it is hyper-connected and primed for growth. And that is because it sits at the heart of England. It's got 90% of the population within a 4-hour drive. It's got a major freight airport, 3 universities, 3 freeport sites, and 3 investment zones, as well as those opportunities for a clean energy supercluster in the north-east of the region. But it's not a cookie-cutter city region. It's quite an unusual economic geography. And so a plan that would work for a city region is not really going to work here. You need something more locally tailored and a little bit more complex. So where did we start? Well, the government's industrial strategy picks out 8 growth sectors, and that's not a bad place to start from a national perspective. But we looked at what it would mean to target just those 8 sectors in the East Midlands as a starting point. And what we found is that only around 15% of the East Midlands workforce are currently employed in those sectors. Moreover, if you look at where the existing industrial clusters are in the East Midlands, they're kind of heavily clustered around the 2 main cities, Derby and Nottingham, and those that are outside those cities tend to be more skewed towards advanced manufacturing. So a focus on just these 8 sectors would create quite a geographically and potentially demographically skewed type of growth, because we know these also involve lots of graduate level jobs. So for the East Midlands, we need more than just this kind of top-down theory of change. The East Midlands is also a very outward-facing region. It's characterised by its outward connections, and for some parts of the region, those outward connections will matter at least as much as the inward connections, and that tells us something about what needs to go into a growth plan for a region like this. What this is showing you is just commuting in and out of the region. You can see for places in the north, but not only there, what's going on in the neighbouring economic centres like Sheffield is going to be really important. Looking at access to good jobs across the region, you also see a lot of spatial variation. So this shows you how easy it is to get to a specialised or high-paying job by public transport in different parts of the region. And if you're looking at lighter colours, that puts you in the kind of top decile nationally. Darker colours are in the bottom decile nationally. And you can see huge variation. Some of the areas in EMCA are amongst the best connected. Others, really not so. And that speaks to some of the local characteristics of the economy in those places, but also to the transport connections that people are able to benefit from. So bringing that all together then, we've got a region that is, by all accounts, brimming with opportunity, but presents some challenges for inclusive growth. It's not a typical city region geography. It's polycentric and sometimes outward-facing. It's also an incredibly diverse region with a mix of urban, rural, and post-industrial towns that all have different challenges and opportunities. And it has areas of entrenched deprivation, both urban and rural deprivation, including with sort of ethnic and different community characteristics that need to be contended with. So what we concluded quite early on was that a one-size-fits-all approach won't work in this region, and nor will a plan that simply seeks to grow the city centres and hope for a trickle-down effect from there. So our approach was to develop the Opportunity Escalator, something which you've heard quite a lot about, but which I'll explain a little bit more about now. So behind the approach is quite a simple idea, which is that you need to help people get on the escalator to economic opportunity, and then you need to help them get up. So many people face barriers to even engaging with good work in the first place. That includes health barriers, caring responsibilities, poor access to housing or transport, or even just weak support networks. And you have to have a plan for tackling all of those barriers before you can make your growth plan inclusive. And then the second part is where our toolkit comes in a lot more, which is around helping people to get up the escalator. And that means having accessible job opportunities with non-graduate entry routes, having routes for pay progression once you're in a job, clear learning pathways, flexibility, and good pay and conditions. So that's the core of the Opportunity Escalator approach. But we also built a toolkit for this. And you've heard a bit about that toolkit today. But ultimately, what the toolkit can do is it allows the combined authority to make decisions about what types of industries and occupations to attract based on the inclusive growth impacts of those industries on the local population. So it does this by taking a geographic area and matching a set of potential new industries to the existing skill sets and occupations of the people who live there. And then it can tell you which industries are best suited to raise the pay and the skills levels of the people in that area. And it can identify the skills gaps that most need to be closed to help people do that. It can do that in aggregate, or you can take individual pairs of occupations, essentially a learner and a potential job, and look at the very specific skills gaps that that learner might need to close to move from job A to job B. The other thing that the toolkit can do is it can show you the key transport links and the housing needs that will most readily broaden access to a set of jobs that you are hoping to bring to an area. So you see those two maps at the bottom. I'll talk about those a little bit more. But essentially it shows you, if you build a new transport link from A to B, who are the people who would be able to then benefit from the extra jobs that they have access to. So we use the toolkit to draw a number of insights on the skills and connections that would most readily deliver inclusive growth in the East Midlands. And we use that to create a spatial framework for more localized growth plans for different parts of the region. And those individual growth plans are detailed in the paper, but ultimately they're based on the local skills of the workers in those places. They take account of the transport links that they're able to access, and they can also provide insights into the level of affordable housing demand that is present in those areas if the new jobs come to fruition. I'll just briefly run through some of the top lines from all of that analysis which I've just described. So what we found is that in general, for the East Midlands, traditional manufacturing jobs and technical services industries can and will offer good entry points and pay progression for a large number of workers. And that includes non-graduates. And that's a couple of things going on there. So manufacturing tends to offer better paid roles for non-graduates just on average. But then certain services industries are quite good for providing those routes between traditionally non-graduate roles and more graduate level skills for people to move between, even mid-career. And that includes things like accounting and business support, health and education. So what that told us is that for a truly inclusive growth plan in the region, you need to be taking account of those industries and trying to nurture them locally. We also saw that some of the region is quite heavily sort of skewed towards things like the visitor economy. And we provided some analysis about the types of ways that you could target higher value, higher paid types of work in the visitor economy. But obviously the combined authority is going to need to work quite closely with employers and skills providers to deliver this. And that includes local anchor employers, SMEs, NHS and schools. We also found that connecting places to deeper, more complex labour markets that might be on their doorstep is likely to boost the opportunities in the middle of the income distribution. And this is where connections between places like Mansfield, Ashfield and Nottingham, and between Chesterfield and Sheffield start to matter the most in the middle of the income distribution. In terms of the key connections to strengthen, the combined authority has a plan for the Trent Arc to essentially join up the cities of Nottingham and Derby. And we found that strengthening connections across that arc and also between the city centres in Derby and Nottingham to the outer parts of those cities will broaden by some degree the opportunities available to people on lower incomes in those places. Similarly, a stronger connection between Mansfield and Ashfield in the middle of the region and those opportunities in the arc could have quite an effect on the level of opportunities for people in that region. So we modelled that basically 3 times more people could find work in the Trent arc from Mansfield and Ashfield based on their current skill sets and receive a pay rise with a stronger and faster link between those places. Similarly, if we want to make the most of the clean energy supercluster idea, it needs better transport links west and south to some of the places that are not currently very well connected. So just in summary then, what the toolkit can give you is a highly tailored local growth plan based on the existing skills and strengths of the workforce. It can give you detailed insights into the skills gaps that you need to close, and it can give you a basis for prioritising things like transport spending and affordable housing budgets to broaden access to those job opportunities. But it can't do everything. It is just a toolkit. And we know that we also need a much wider plan for improving the skills system and addressing the barriers that stand in people's way. And there is a huge portion of the report devoted to all of those things. And this is where the work of some of the individual commissioners really came through, and they'll be able to give you a better account than I can at this point. But just to give you a quick summary of some of those areas that you'll find covered in quite some depth within the rest of the report. We made a number of recommendations on how to tackle the barriers to inclusive growth and enable it in the best possible way. And the first that I'll mention is around a new East Midlands youth ambition. So what we heard was that children going through school and into further education and higher education often lack clear careers advice, opportunities to do work experience, and that's feeding into essentially a lack of awareness and in some cases ambition around what they can achieve in their own region. So the Commission has recommended that the Mayor spearheads a region-wide guarantee of high-quality careers guidance and work experience to all school children in the region, starting at primary school, and obviously at that age involving parents as much as children in the process. And that should be buttressed by mental health support for children as they grow up, as we know this is increasingly a problem that's feeding into the NEET problem. We also set out some detailed proposals for an enhanced strategic coordination of the skills system, led by the combined authority, but partnering with local employers and local education providers. And that is one of the roles that the combined authority can... This happened on Monday. Right, good. That's one of the roles that the combined authority can take that was not really possible before on a region-wide basis. And as part of this, we were also asking central government to look again at the powers and the ability that local government has to challenge underperformance in local schools. Because under the academisation system, those levers have really disappeared for local authorities. So that is an important part of the picture here. The combined authority only has the levers once you get to post-16 education, but much of the tone has been set in school. We also have detailed recommendations on the switch towards neighbourhood health teams in the NHS 10-year plan and the delivery of neighbourhood health hubs, and how to maximise those to address economic exclusion. And building on our recent work on social capital and how central that is to economic mobility, we also recommended that the Mayor has the first ever mayoral-led strategy to improve the strength of social connections in the region alongside economic growth. And finally, the report makes a number of recommendations around unleashing the potential of private finance to deliver these plans, because we know that they can't be delivered on the public purse, and how to mobilise the local coalitions for change, because the combined authority obviously cannot act alone. So that's a whistle-stop tour. I'm sure others will say more about some of those recommendations. We also just wanted to say how national government can enable this. And there are three main ways. So the first is fixing the history of underinvestment in the region. Now, we heard from the Mayor a minute ago that there has been some step towards that in the spending review. But for a long time, the East Midlands has been bottom of the league table for public spending across the whole of England. And it will take some time to correct that history of underinvestment. Similarly, the Mayor does not currently have an integrated funding settlement, and we would argue needs to be placed on the fast track for an integrated funding settlement. That's not just about more funding, but it's about more flexibility to pursue economic and inclusive growth priorities and to use funding more flexibly between different categories. And finally, levelling up the powers that the East Midlands have to at least the level of the Greater Manchester Combined Authority over education and skills. And that includes some of those recommendations around potentially an enhanced role on schools, but also looking at how the Combined Authority can influence health commissioning to tackle economic exclusion through healthcare. What's the size of the prize here? Well, based on our modelling, we looked at the top 18 industrial sites across the East Midlands, and we estimated that if you can follow that opportunity escalator approach of taking people who have well-matched skill sets but who need a bit of help to move up the skills ladder to get a pay boost, if you can take that approach for the top 18 sites across the region, that could mean a £6,700 pay boost for those workers, 30,000 of them, on average. If you can chip into the gap in health-related worker inactivity between the East Midlands and other parts of the country, that could knock at least £1 billion off the £10 billion annual cost of worker ill health. Similarly, if you can strengthen people's social connections, people from deprived backgrounds, we've seen from our previous research that this can lead to an extra £5,000 of earnings per year for those people. And if you look at closing the social capital gap for deprived areas across the region, that could mean an extra £1.4 billion in income for those people over the next 10 years. And the mayoral strategy on social capital would be the key channel for doing that. And then finally, if you can close the investment gap between the East Midlands and the best performing regions outside of London and the South East, that could lead to £200 billion of economic benefits by 2035 for the region. So this is just to underline that the size of the prize is fairly huge, and the Inclusive Growth Commission's recommendations can hopefully make a huge difference to a wide range of people. And that's all from me.
Welcome the commissioners up to the stage. Julia, Sarah, John, Gillian. Marvin. You joining us as well, Claire? Come on up, Claire. Well, listen, thank you. Sit on the floor, Claire, is that all right? Have this one. Have this one. Well, listen, let me thank you, Mark, for that fantastic job. We now welcome to the stage 5 fantastic commissioners, as well as, of course, a fantastic mayor. And we go to each of the commissioners in turn, actually, to say a little bit about what the report means, how it can make a difference, and drawing in particular on the strengths and expertise that you have brought to the Commission, which, as I say, has been absolutely wonderful. Could start maybe, Gillian, with you. From your civil society perch, we heard a lot from Mark about the social barriers to growth and inclusion. Could you say a bit about how the report might make a difference to those things?
I mean, I genuinely agree with Mayor Clare that actually this is an opportunity of a lifetime to actually have an inclusive growth strategy. There's been many a growth strategy, but to have an inclusive one that actually looks at the barriers to people being able to accept and actually work with those opportunities. You know, working for the YMCA, we actually work with young people who are the furthest away from being able to actually embrace opportunity. So to look at their housing needs, to look at their social needs, to look at their health needs, to look at their transport needs, the affordability, the affordable housing alone, I think will make a significant difference. It has been so refreshing, breathtaking to be listened to around the social need agenda and to have a report that talks about social fabric. I have never seen the likes of before. And I'd like to thank my fellow commissioners and the RSA, and indeed the Mayor, for listening that we need to make sure that the barriers are as important as the opportunity. And then also, once we get young people on that escalator, it's actually keeping them on it. Previously, a support plan's been like the Marie Celeste. Oh good, we've got someone on a job, tick. Keeping them in a job and then building them whilst they're in that job to make positive choices, to have the money, to have the resource to make those positive choices is such an exciting opportunity for a generation.
Thank you, Gillian, for that. Julia, if we could turn to you. You've been pressing us, rightly, all the way through about education, schools, and talk us through why that matters so much, particularly in the East Midlands.
Well, I've known the East Midlands for years on end, largely thanks to this man who, when I ran business in the community, was one of the great drivers and advocates for the East Midlands. But I'd never understood until I came on this absolutely fantastic commission. My God, have I learnt a lot, and how well you've done, Andy, in shaping it with a great team. But what I hadn't really taken in, that this East Midlands is actually a butterfly. And if you look at those pictures, you can see that the spine of the butterfly is actually doing bloody well. You've got some fantastic businesses, some great opportunities, some great social connections, some great community entrepreneurs. But more widely, in the wings of the butterfly, it's a pretty good disaster area, really. And I hadn't taken in until the sort of management by fact that I think we've now got, which thank God Claire is going to grip, hold and make happen, that there are some real pockets of real failure. Let me just call it out. At the national level, when the academy movement was driven, the last government has been proud of saying that, you know, we're in a golden age of education. We've done so much. We got up to reading scores as number 3. Actually, 532 academies who've been made in the last period of time are now doing worse than they were when they were under the local authority. And for me, the push all the time is to say, yes, for God's sake, let's celebrate the best. What do we learn? What can we learn out of Nottingham's great work on Better Start? All that early year stuff needs absolutely to be run across the region. But by God, let us identify where there is no opportunity escalator for those young people, because they are not even achieving the basics that we need to get them to achieve if they are to fly. So for me, in a private room with a map, I would go through where are those academy schools that are failing and what do we need to do about getting hold of the DFE, who think they're running something called RISE, which is to try and build the leadership performance and the turnaround of academies. Where's the team that's coming to help? What can we all do? That, for me, is one of the big things. And the other point I'd make, having sat on the Careers and Enterprise Company for 10 years, where we have now got something to measure, the Gatsby benchmarks, we can now see where schools are. The issue is, in my experience, not to do with the energy and drive of employers wanting to do things which can help make a difference. Not all of them, and not sustainable enough. The issue is whether the careers leader in a school is a 100% appointment or is doing it interspersed with geography in the juniors. Right. There's a real issue about the quality and the drive and the sustainability of careers leadership in schools.
Thank you, Julia, for that super powerfully put, as ever. Sarah, you've been leading, and leading brilliantly, I should say, the private finance aspect of this, and it's clear that East Midlands historically has not fared well on that front. Talk us through what's needed to change things.
Yes, thank you, Andy, and thank you, as others have said, so much for your expert chairing of this commission. It's been an enormous pleasure. I am not a local commissioner, I'm a national commissioner, and I live on Exmoor, so for me it's been an incredible opportunity to learn more about the East Midlands, and it is, as you say, a fantastic region where already you've got a load of businesses and investors that are extremely active, and one of the highlights of our commission work was a visit to the Rolls-Royce campus outside Derby. Nearly 18,000 people there. They're working on some of the most exciting industrial developments in the country, for example, around the small modular reactors. So there are already amazing investors, amazing businesses working and employing people in the East Midlands. However, what we thought about very carefully was what does, as others have spoken of, what does inclusive growth really look like? And I've been very pleased that we've focused both on how does the East Midlands get more of the big institutional investment that it needs for those really significant opportunities, but also how does it build, how do we use private investment alongside public investment to build the social fabric, to work in communities. We've got some investors in the room, for example, Resonance and the Key Fund, who are social impact investors, providing, for example, not just routes out of homelessness, but addressing some of the issues around why people have become homeless in the first place and how they can stay in the homes that are created for them. So I've been very pleased that we've taken that very broad perspective on what private investment can deliver in a region like the East Midlands. And I think that the sort of three things that what's so exciting is that the combined authorities really provide new opportunities across the country, not just in the East Midlands, to really craft an investment offer and to be attractive to private investors in a way that the smaller local authorities just haven't been able to do. So, and what they provide the opportunity to do is really threefold. One, and it's probably the most important thing to deliver successful public-private partnerships, is build a network of relationships, of trusting relationships between the public and the private investors, and do that at the outset. Craft an investment plan together, not just from, government has a great track record of starting, of deciding what private investors should do and then laying it out on the table. Don't do that. Craft that work together. Secondly is build a narrative. The East Midlands is not as well known as it should be. Its great characteristics is not as trumpeted as they could be. With the combined authority, there's now a fantastic opportunity to really build that narrative. And finally, build a pipeline of investable projects, both at the big institutional level and at the smaller but equally impactful social fabric level. So build that network, build the narrative, and build the investable pipeline. And I'm so excited to see the work that Mayor Clare is going to lead on all of those. Thank you.
Sarah, thank you. John, if we turn to you as, you don't mind me saying, one of the UK's most eminent business people, tell me a bit about the opportunity for business within the East Midlands region.
Well, I think from a business perspective, Andy, this is a very important report. By nature, I'm a cynic. I have seen a few over the years government reports. Devolution, downloading of finance and investment, none of which really happens. And it seemed to me for a long time that word inclusive growth is so important. Businesses in the East Midlands today, we have some fantastic businesses. Businesses for the future, businesses that have been successful over many years, but businesses also which are not just giant corporations, but many medium-sized enterprises which have had some really tough challenges in recent years. not just with COVID, but prior to COVID too, because as Mayor Clare so eloquently outlined, it's the forgotten part of the country. And one of the things in this report, if I may point out, are to national government, if we're going to make this report make the difference to business and wider, then Mayor Clare's got to have the tools. She's got to have the support of us all to put pressure on government to make sure you get the tools to get this job done. But businesses locally are, many of them, not sure. They're uncertain. Should they invest? Their family businesses, supply chains, you know, we mentioned Rolls-Royce, an amazing business, but it's got a supply chain. JCB, Experian. And I think what we've tried to do in this report is identify the barriers, not just the opportunities, but the barriers, some of which I think are probably self-evident to most people in this room. But there's no strategy been put in place to deal with it. And Andy, you've done a lot in business. You're a brilliant economist. I don't know what an industrial strategy is. It's something that goes back many years now, but what we've got here is something that recognizes there are some key sectors for the country, but we're talking about those 80% of people and companies that have just not been touched by these so-called strategies. So the word inclusive, right at the beginning, there's a lot of cynicism about whether that's possible. It is possible, but it will only happen if two things happen. We all get behind it and want to make it a success, and two, we get right behind Mayor Clare and get her the tools, the investment, the things that's needed to deliver on this strategy.
Brilliant. John, thank you. Thank you for that. Marvin, if I come to you finally. I was in Bristol the weekend, actually. What a fantastic city it is, and what a fantastic job you did as mayor.
It improved in 2016.
Tell us about the secret sauce that you brought to Bristol and that you are now, through your expertise on the Commission, bringing to the East Midlands.
Well, I just go back to one of the points that I was really thinking when Claire was speaking. When I was asked about before how you begin to do inclusive growth, I think one of the first things you need to do is be intentional about it. And actually, for the fact that you've said we are going to do inclusive growth and it's credible actually matters. It's unquantifiable, really. And I've said this time and time again, it can be a word, again, it can be lost in cynicism, that it can float around, it's another strategy, or someone can believe that there's a leader here that's planting a flag and saying this is going to be a characteristic of the way we do things in this part of the world. And if the leader plants a flag, as has been done, then all those different sectors, the public sector partners, private sector, voluntary community sector, faith organisations know what the business is about, and then they can lean in. Yeah. And what we found in Bristol, you mentioned the one city approach at the end, I'll say just a snippet about that, but what we found is once we'd agreed as a city, and I think you can scale it up, what we are in the business of doing, then I'm not going to come into your organisation and change your strategy, but the way you pursue your strategy as a sector or an organisation can lean into that broader goal. And I think one of the things that has really come out, and has been emphasised again on the panel, and Claire mentioned, no single organisation or person can deliver for any place. Right? Places are collective acts. And actually, it was my former chief constable who said, world-class public sector leadership is not about what you control, it's about what you influence. And it's the convening power. Can we plant that flag and get people leaning into a goal? And you've heard on here, we've talked about schools, transport, health, all these wider determinants are being included in this report as key to delivering the outcomes that we want. And I think that's a very positive is an understatement, but a very positive characteristic for the leadership that's in East Midlands.
Marvin, thank you. I'm going to go to the floor now for some questions, so prepare those as a roving mic to pick those up. Just while you're thinking, though, Claire, any very, very quick reflections on what you've heard there from the commissioners?
Well, I think
first of all, thank you to all of you personally for your contributions. And it's the nature of your contributions and expertise that brings this to life, because the reality is it isn't one single solution. It's the range of the connectivity of all of those things. And I think, in a time when there's a real questioning of the pride and the purpose in communities and the connectivity within them, not just the transport links, but that sort of social fabric of them, particularly in some of the small towns, the ex-mining communities that we've got in our area, where the Miners' Welfare Association wasn't just a club that you turned up on Saturday night, but it actually provided that social fabric. It had the local bands, it had the things that provided support for people when they needed it, and tackled loneliness, and did all of those things that has been lost and not replaced in a new age. And for us, it's about finding the things that connect people to a purpose in their place and give them that pride back. And that, I think, will help us to shape our future.
Thank you, Claire. Looking for hands in the room. Who would like ask a question as the lights go up and the rain comes down? There at the back. If there's another one, I'll take two at a time, if that's okay.
Hello, Kitty, is it working? I'll shout. Kitty Usher, Head of Group Policy Development at Barclays Bank. This is a really exciting and refreshing contribution to the debate, so congratulations to Claire and all. I just had sort of one question and reflection. The focus of what we've heard seems to be about the supply of the right type of jobs to help individuals who are stuck move to the next stage. And Claire, you gave a really sort of poignant example about a single parent who's both cash poor and time poor. I wonder if we could say a little bit more on the demand side, perhaps, of that type of individual or someone who we feel we want to support to progress further up the opportunity escalator. How does it? How is this? It's quite a soft question. How does the situation change such that the kind of supported effort is made on the demand side of the individual, as well as the opportunities that are created by the action of policymakers?
Kitty, thank you for that. Was there another just here, and then third here, and then we'll go back to the panel.
Hi, hello, I'm Samantha Nibbler. I'm the Member of Parliament for South Derbyshire. I know Claire very well and campaigned very hard to get her elected. You can say thank you later. I am the founder of Labour Women in Tech. My background is working in data and technology, and I welcome this so much because it's so overlaid with so many of the ambitions and passions that I've got for young people in South Derbyshire, particularly those from deprived areas. So very keen to understand from the panel how I can use my platform as a Member of Parliament. I know that there are some government, but I'm just a mere backbencher. How I can use my influence in Parliament, whether it's because I'm the chair of the all-party parliamentary group for FinTech, whether I'm doing this campaigning to get more girls and women into tech and STEM, to help this be successful. Because I think by you being successful, I increase my chances at the next general election.
Thank you, Samantha. I'll settle down here, and then we'll go back to the panel.
Thank you very much for that. I'm Salo. I'm the founder of an AI company called Keynote. My question, I think this is a fantastic report, and then connecting people to purpose, closing the skills gaps, I think are critical. I wanted to ask, how do you ensure that this is a kind of like a perpetual process? So, because employers' requirements on the skills are always going to be different and improving. And then how do you make sure the skills gaps of job seekers are always caught up with what they want?
Three terrific questions. I'm going to go down the panel. Feel free to pick and choose. Don't feel you need to answer all three of them, not least because we're running out of time. And then after that, I'm going to go down the line again and ask you all for your one wish for the East Midlands off the back of this report. But let's start with the three questions, each of which were excellent. And Marvin, do you want to pick off one of those to say something about, briefly?
Well, trying to think which one. So the question about how do you keep the plan alive? I don't know if there's any magic formula to that other than, I don't know if there's any magic formula to that other than the political commitment to do so. But I would also say, obviously, one of the things that Claire mentioned at the beginning, there has to be buy-in. There's a lot of work being done, a lot of people engaged, and that was done on purpose, very early doors. I mean, it's a self-evident truth. You can't just go into a back room, write a plan, come out and present it. The level of engagement, the level of discussion is a key part of giving it legitimacy and authority. And actually, the whole approach will not just be stagnant in the moment, but it will grow and iterate as partners across the region buy in and continually feed back and support that process. So hopefully, when we got that thing called One City that was up there, we wrote a One City plan and we published the first version in 2017. We're now on the 5th version of that plan because we refresh it every 2 years. We used to refresh it every year, but austerity and resources and all that. So every 2 years. The plan published when I left office, actually, I finished in 2024. My successors still have that plan. So it offered that consistency across the electoral cycle. And it is different today than it was when we first published it. And now it's owned by the city. But it takes, so if I just say one thing, what I also said to people at the beginning of our process is, not every meeting is going to produce a fireworks of outcomes, all right? So don't be one of those people that go to the meeting and you say at the end of 2 hours, well, I've been sitting here for 2 hours waiting for someone to say this and no one said it. Well, you should have said it. So if everyone leans in, I think it gives it that life and that authority and that dynamism.
Marvin, thank you. John, I'm sorry to be as brief as you can, John.
I will, very quickly.
Doesn't need
Samantha, I'm delighted you got elected. Your background, the knowledge that you have, if you work with Claire and the way the MCA are trying to pull these things together, I think our aim is to improve people's lives. If people feel that's what MCA is doing, that's what you're doing as an MP, it's got to improve your chances for re-election. But merely concentrating on national issues in London isn't going to help the people of the East Midlands. That's why we're here.
Thank you, John. Sarah.
2 very quick points, and one which I think partially addresses both the demand question and your question, Samantha, which is one of the things that we really focused on was the need for more career guidance in schools and a much greater engagement with younger people, but right from primary school, as Mark said, but through to secondary and then tertiary education, to really help them understand what the opportunities are, where they are, and how they can access them. And the second very quick point on the permanence, how to make it permanent. One of the, we had a government that came into power saying it was not going to move ministers every 7 months. But sadly, it hasn't stuck to that promise. But what Mayor Clare can do is at MCA is keep teams in place, keep people in post, so that you have a real opportunity to build the trusting relationships that are so necessary to deliver not just the sort of private investment agenda, but the whole of the work that we've been talking about. Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah. Julia.
On the first question, Kitty, I would be absolutely driving where are the health service, where are the public service on the pre-recruitment training and the pre-recruitment hiring. I'd be absolutely ruthless about what those plans are. It's very easy to pluck the low-hanging fruit, and there's plenty of low-hanging fruit, I suspect, in the East Midlands. We've absolutely got to get to the places, we've got to get wheels to work, and we've got to get opportunities to those who aren't having them. On what do MPs do? My God, MPs concentrate on 3 things they really know about and don't dance about talking about the things it is not their skill. To have somebody like you, I'm taking John's point, who understands where the tech operation is going, a lot of these jobs coming through will be tech. Why are we not getting girls into them? What the hell is going on in the schools and in all that careers? Where are the role models? Find us 50 unbelievably powerful women across the East Midlands, all of whom have made it out of the East Midlands, and just drive that into schools as role models. Get the I Will campaign in there to try and get more young people talking it up.
That's it.
Wonderful. Gillian.
I think it's also to Samantha, I agree with what you're saying, but also let's do more than just in the schools.
Yeah.
I think we need to turn the targets and the funding streams on their head and actually start working with young people now, not when they've got into trouble. The problem is the threshold is so high to actually get youth and community support in our communities. It's actually when somebody has gone on the wrong path. Let's get in there first. Let's get youth and community workers based between the schools, the communities and the families. Let's inspire our young people. If that socialisation is not inspiring them, let's get the youth and community workers in place. For the woman who's in the shop, who's actually going to work with her to say that she has got a future. Yeah. Let's get the community workers also in the businesses. Let's work with the HR departments within all our businesses and put the youth and community workers in there. When we had large employers, they've got their football teams, they've got their cricket teams. When you've got SMEs, who's connecting them? Let's get youth and community workers back. Let's not just have targeted, let's meet with young people in the community where they're at, not where we think they should be.
Fantastic. Fantastic practical suggestion, Gillian. Thank you. Claire.
So I think it is about making every touch point that that person has with different agencies, different parts of the community, all telling the same story. And the challenge is that for a young woman like that, she's probably been grown up in a community where nobody believes anything's going to change. Yeah. And therefore, it's not that she doesn't have aspiration, it's just simply capped because nobody's telling her you could do better than this and here's how you can do it. And I think if we start particularly at the schools, if we use those opportunities in every place to support our children, to show good examples, that's how we do it. And that leads into your point, which is ultimately, if we're all leaning in and we're making this work and we're accepting that this is our challenge collectively, we will all see the benefits of that. It can't be driven by the public sector. It can't be driven just by one person. And then finally, into what our members of parliament, and I'm really pleased that I've got a number of the members of parliament here today, what you can all do is make the case for integrated settlement and the established status for the combined authority and for the mayor. More powers into the mayor to be able to drive this agenda, and also an engagement with the Department for Education to say, if we want to see this change, we have to start in the schools. We need that support around careers, and we need to change the narrative about what we're saying to children and young people. And we've got some fantastic examples already in our area, whether it be the Fusion Cafe set up by Bassett Law Council in partnership with Step Fusion, which is already talking to those children about what those jobs will be in fusion energy in the future. It's just the start, and we need so much more of that, and you can help us with that and with engagement around skills.
Right, final point. Indeed, my final act at the RSA, actually, is to play Fairy Godfather. Adding that to my CV after today's meeting. And ask for one sentence and one wish for the future for the East Midlands from each of our panellists. I'm turning to you again, Marvin, first, if I may. One sentence, Marvin.
I'll go first. I'm going to be quite basic about it. None's for free. If you want something, you need resources. It needs a proper... Nothing's for free. So, if you need stuff, it's got to get paid for. So Claire's going to need a proper funding settlement.
Wonderful. John.
Drive growth, create jobs, improve people's lives, create prosperity, which will encourage us all to be more optimistic, but let's do it together.
Wonderful. Sarah.
Put the effort in to build the collaborative partnerships now that will support so much of this work.
Terrific. Julia.
Commit to publish the prospectus for the East Midlands, starting with this report, and then in a year's time, where have we got to, what have we learned? A year's time after, what have we got to, what have we learned? And drive the profile of the butterfly at national level as the great unsung potential for inclusive growth.
Fabulous. Gillian.
Two things. Let's get youth and community workers back in the community for social fabric. And also, can we have some stability in housing, please? I think we're on our 14th housing minister in as many years.
Claire, the last word rightly should sit with you at the apex of all of this. I'll give you 2 sentences.
Lean into this. Make this your plan for growth, your plan for opportunity, wherever you are, whoever you are. And be evangelists for it, because it's not just about the people sitting in this room. You've got to take this to your organisations, to your companies, and you've got to tell them what's going on in the East Midlands. I'm an ambassador for it, but so now are you.
Fantastic. Listen, let's draw things to a close. Let me thank you all for coming along today, and also all those online. I know there are many hundreds who have joined us and have made this such a successful and uplifting, I should say, event. Let me extend my thanks to all the commissioners, not just for your amazing contributions today, but for all the effort you have put in over the past year to make this report such an enormous success. And finally, my thanks and best wishes go to Claire and all the MCA team in taking these things forward. You made the point, Claire, this has to be a collaborative effort. And rest assured, I'm sure everyone here, certainly myself, see themselves as part of the family that can help make that happen. Thanks, everyone. Again, look forward to seeing you all soon. Thank you.